Good morning, everyone. Let's get inside so we can get started. Welcome to our 6th annual Pocasset Water Quality Coalition. Martha, can I have one of those? Martha?
Yes.
Can I have one? Thanks. 6th annual meeting. So we're very honored to have our guest speaker, Joe Costa, along with Keith Wilder, who is the natural fertilizer guru. So first of all, we just want to thank everyone for coming, and we appreciate all the support. We love everybody pays their dues and joins in on things that we're trying to get done. So we appreciate all that. I guess we're going to have a couple of reviews for various projects that we have underway before we get to Joe. So I'm going to invite Paula Serta to come up and talk about rain gardens.
Okay. Right now?
Right now.
All right.
So Paula is our volunteer coordinator, and we don't do anything without Paula.
Well, I appreciate that. Okay. So, looking around, thank you so much, all of you. This is just great. We just want to do a quick recap of the rain garden situation. And most of you are pretty much caught up on it, but the first rain garden was that one down there, closer to Bellboy. And I think it's like the gold standard for rain gardens. I mean, it was a lot of work putting it in. I think we spent 2 days, 3 days. It was a lot of work. It was a learning experience, but it works just exactly the way it's supposed to. It looks good. It functions beautifully. The drain project enhances it. It enhances all of them, actually, 1 and 2. But anyway, thank you for that. We compiled a list at that point of 52 volunteers from the neighborhood and close by areas, other neighborhoods in Pocasset. And of the 52 people, I knew personally 30. That means I met 20 people doing that project. And that's a great thing. So it's been wonderful, really. So that one looks good. Rain garden number 2 at the end of Park Street is a smaller one. We built that one. And number 3 over past the beach at the same time. With the help from the Upper Cape Technical School, they sent us, I don't know, remember how many volunteers? 25 and 2 teachers. And they did a lot of heavy lifting that we found difficult in number 1 without them. So that was good. Number 2, the rain garden number 2 is working. People sometimes express concern about the water that's staying at the bottom of it, but it's doing what it's supposed to do. The water does drain through, and now that the drains are in, even though they're not complete, it is draining better than it was before, so that's a great thing. It's not multiplying as fast as that one, but it's had 1 less summer to do that, so everything's good. And in number 3, it's great. Everything's doing very well in number 3. It's draining water. There are phragmites growing up in it, which occasionally people will stop and cut them down towards the soil line, and that will keep them in check. So rain garden-wise, we're in great shape. If there's anybody here that's not on my contact list for volunteer activities, if you'd like to be, I'd be happy to put you on. What else do I need to say, Keith?
4 and 5.
Oh! There are 2 other smaller rain gardens going in on Circuit Ave near Pequot, and they're going to be built in September. Small, not as much excavation as the others involved, and I have my list of 52 people. Would be happy to add it to you if you're interested. And that's all done with the grant money. And Laura is here. And she was one of the people that came up with the idea of rain gardens in the first place. So I just want to say thank you.
Laura from Vermont.
Yeah.
Great, Paula. Thank you very much. So one person we need to recognize, because we would not have built these rain gardens without an engineer to do it. And we would have gone way over budget because Dan did all of his work pro bono. I know he's here somewhere, but he likes to hide. Dan Barnett standing by the door over there. That's our, couldn't have done it without him. Okay, so Frank Gasson, who's the founder of our group, needs to come up. We're going to talk a little bit about our oysters.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you.
This is going to be very short, but we've got in 2026, which is the third year that we participated and partnered with the Bourne Recreation Department, Natural Resources rather, into buying oyster spat, which is the baby ones. There's some of them over there on Pocasset Island in the what we used to call the horseshoe, okay? And the Pocasset Water Quality Coalition contributes $2,000 for approximately 200,000 baby spat, okay? A full-grown oyster will filter 50 gallons of water a day, taking out harmful nutrients like nitrogen, which are removed forever. The last fall, for the first time, the baby oysters that we purchased 3 years ago were scattered off of the spit on Pocasset Island and elsewhere, and they're full grown at that point, and they can be harvested. I collected some of them. I ate them. They were absolutely delicious. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well done, Frank. So Frank was the founder of this group in 2019 from nothing. We had a meeting here that had about 30 people. We ended up going to town hall with 140 people to try to get the town's attention that we needed a CWMP. So Frank is still part of the group every day, every week. Frank's in charge of signs, so if you have a sign on your property, Frank's the guy. Okay, so now we're going to get to the meat of the presentation. So this young fellow right here, Joe Costa, he was part of the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program for 36 years. I have a few things to read about Joe. I don't want to take away his time. He grew up in New Bedford, and in the 6th and 9th through 9th grades, he went on a program in the summer to learn about the water. And at that point, when he was 9 years old, Frank decided he was going to be a marine biologist. So, right, Joe?
That's correct.
Hey, this is your retirement letter.
Yeah, there you go.
So, he grew up around Buzzards Bay and was curious about eelgrass. So Joe went to Cal Berkeley for the marine biology program, and from there he went on to the BU program at Woods Hole. He graduated with a PhD. Well done. And he was very curious about eelgrass, and Joe's going to have things to say about that today. So the plan that Joe created put emphasis on nitrogen and bacteria pollution and managing non-point sources of pollution like septic systems and stormwater discharge. So my favorite line in Joe's retirement letter, I was the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program Director for all these years for one selfish reason. I love my job. Joe Costa.
Thank you to you, Tim. Thank you all for coming on this beautiful morning. I'm glad it was nice and cool and comfortable. It's been pretty hot lately, so this is such a great day to be here. I'm going to sit down just so I'm not blocking the screen. It's going to be hard for everyone to see the screen, and I realize that, so I'm not going to dwell too much on the imagery and the text that's on there. But this is an image. I wrote 1943. It's actually 1945. This is a really fascinating photograph. I didn't realize until I saw it that the Pocasset Golf Course came all the way down to Hen Cove, and that area is now Bella Vista. So all those, that part of the course was sold because they were having financial difficulties. So all those holes disappeared, became Bella Vista, and they expanded elsewhere. And that's what it looks like today. The other thing that's really interesting here is you can see how extensive the Pocasset salt marsh is at the site. And then you can see many decades later, well, part of it was filled in at the north side, the south side, and a lot of it has disappeared. I'm not going to be talking too much about the salt marsh. We've gotten a lot of questions about the salt marsh over the years, and I can talk to some of you afterwards about it. But I really want to talk about nitrogen and the whole process of establishing limits in coastal waters, coastal watersheds, to reduce nitrogen, to improve water quality, and to restore natural resources. And I just want to give the take-home messages right up front. You are a nonprofit. You have a lot of power in this town. A lot of decisions are made at town meeting. Bourne has an open town meeting. Often votes are very close. If this group organizes to get things passed at town meeting, you can get a lot done. So I just want to emphasize that a nonprofit group like this, I know some of you are summer residents and the year-round residents will vote at town meeting, but you can organize and focus your efforts to get legislation passed at town meeting. So I just want to emphasize that point. And you can even bring petition articles. You don't have to just vote on existing petitions. You can generate themselves. You just need 10 people to sign a petition to get on the annual town meeting.
Can I interrupt you for
Yeah.
1 second? Many years down here, I was I'm a summer resident, but particularly if there's 2 of you in the household, one can register in your hometown and one can register down here to vote, so you can vote at town meeting.
That's an interesting bit of information. Thank you. The other point I want to emphasize is the actions you take as an individual make a lot of difference. Forget about what the Pocasset Water Quality Coalition does. There are billions of us on this planet, and it's all the individual choices that all those people make. What you buy, what you do, how you handle the land makes a big difference. And there's lots of things you can do just to better the environment, just yourself, on your little piece of land, on your little area, your neighborhood, and so forth. I'm going to talk a little bit about bacteria and nitrogen pollution. There are different types of pollution. They cause different problems, but many of the problems have common solutions, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit more. And finally, there's going to be an effort to get a total maximum daily load passed in Bourne. It's a complex. Do you want me to? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'll stay over here. I don't know if you can still hear me.
It's all right. This was the feedback, so I've got it turned off.
Okay.
Wireless.
All right. So a TMDO will take many years to implement. There's many steps that are involved. Producing a TMDO report, which the coalition is going to be working with DEP on, is one of the first steps. There's so many steps that need to happen at the town level, at the state level, and so forth. So it's going to take a long time, but there's so many things that this group can do in the interim. And the discussions about that I hear about the seeding the shellfish is vitally important. Rain gardens, super important. And by the way, on the shellfish, if you're seeding them, to remove the nitrogen, you have to eat them. So I just want to remind you that if you plant all those shellfish, you got to eat them to get them out of the system. Okay. All right. Keith already told you about me, but the one thing that he didn't mention is why, when I was growing up in New Bedford, I didn't see eelgrass. And then we went on all these dives all around Buzzards Bay, and I saw my first eelgrass in Mattapoisett. I said, oh, this is like really beautiful. This is like a wonderful kind of habitat. And I kept on seeing it all around Buzzards Bay, and I always wondered why it wasn't in New Bedford. And then I went to California, and believe it or not, they have eelgrass in California. And I'm saying, boy, it grows here too, and it grows everywhere. So I decided when I came back here to Woods Hole and do my thesis work, I was going to try to understand why eelgrass didn't grow in New Bedford. Originally, I thought it was toxic pollution. Then I gradually learned that it was all related to water quality, water transparency, nitrogen pollution. And so during the 1980s, when I was doing my thesis, I did talks all around Cape Cod. I went to the Vineyard, I went to Nantucket, gave these lectures about how nitrogen pollution, mostly from septic systems and all these embayments, were causing the disappearance of eelgrass. It was a complicated story because eelgrass disease wiped out eelgrass in the 1930s. It happened about the same time as the Dutch elm disease. And it came back, it took decades to come back. It came back in the 1960s and 70s through most of Buzzards Bay. And when I was doing my thesis, it reached its peak abundance in Buzzards Bay. There was eelgrass everywhere. when I was doing my thesis in Buzzards Bay. And it was even coming back in New Bedford, and it turns out there was reasons for that in terms of the wastewater treatment upgrade. But it was a critical message to get to the towns that your pollution sources are not some distant wastewater treatment plant on the other side of Buzzards Bay. It's your local watershed that you need to manage. It's what happens in your backyard. It's what happens on the streets. It's what happens in your watershed. And by the way, that picture there of the people standing on the raft, I did the first eelgrass restoration in Massachusetts permitted by DEP in 1983. I was the first one who did that. I spent a lot of time underwater. A lot of words here, but the take-home message: bacteria pollution, nitrogen pollution. When I talk about nitrogen pollution, and we're trying to manage nitrogen pollution, we're mostly talking about wastewater. Either a wastewater sewer treatment plant outfall or septic systems. Septic systems leach nitrogen into the ground, and it eventually makes its way to the bay. When we talk about bacteria pollution, I'm mostly focusing on stormwater. And if you have a direct discharge of stormwater to a river, to a stream, to the beach, that is carrying nitrogen from all sorts of sources. Wildlife, pets, birds leaving droppings on roofs and so forth. It can be in some areas of the watershed of Buzzards Bay. I was dealing with agricultural runoff. If you have a beach that's covered with Canada geese and hanging out there, all those droppings, very high levels of bacteria that can close a beach as well. So this, generally I'm talking about stormwater when I'm talking about bacteria pollution, and stormwater is a conveyance mechanism for all these different sources. And then on the other hand, you have nitrogen pollution. It's wastewater, and it changes the environment in a different way. What I always try to communicate to people is, if you have bacteria pollution, the shellfish beds are closed, your swimming beach is closed, but in case of shellfish, they're still there. You just can't eat them. With nutrient pollution, the shellfish are gone. The bottom becomes mucky, filled with lots of algae. It smothers the shellfish, and the eelgrass disappears. The habitat is changed so dramatically. Your water transparency is declines tremendously. I walked out on the dock here in Hen Cove, and I was surprised that it was a calm night, calm morning. I'm looking down, you have very poor water transparency here. Eelgrass is not going to grow in here. Okay, so it's the watershed that you're trying to manage. Here is the Pocasset Harbor Complex watershed. And some of you can't see it, but basically it goes all the way up to the Mass Maritime Reservation. The good news there is that's mostly undeveloped land. It's forested.
The water isn't down.
And the areas that are developed on the base are sewered. And all that sewer goes all the way, believe it or not, to the Cape Cod Canal. There's an infiltration basin up there. But that is the management area. And from a management point of view, we're talking about managing the nitrogen sources, basically everything west of 28. And that's what we need to control nitrogen for. Going back to shellfish beds, I was really surprised. Again, it may be hard for some of you to see, but you have permanently closed shellfish beds in the Pocasset Harbor Complex. It's right up next to Patuxent Marsh. It's right here on the north side of Hen Cove, near the conservation pond. That's what we call that. I don't know what you call it. That little stream that comes in there. And then by Kingman Marina and Red Brook. Those areas are permanently closed. They drain a lot of areas. It's higher in bacteria. Those areas are permanently closed by DEP year-round. Again, it may be hard for some of you to see, but then you have these blue hatched areas, and those are called seasonal closures. And Pocasset Harbor is closed in the summer. Red Brook Harbor is closed in the summer. Hospital Cove is closed in the summer. Up until this year, I was shocked when I saw this year that now all of Pocasset is closed to shellfishing now throughout the summer. You used to be able to shellfish outside those harbors, now you can't. Part of that is because of bacteria issues. Part of it is because the FDA changed certain rules. When you have very dense mooring areas like you have here, they enacted a new rule saying that there's going to be a chance that people will release waste from their boat, even though we have a boat no discharge area in Buzzards Bay. People will release waste, so it's a precautionary closure. I'd like to see the sanitary survey report. I encourage the Pocasset Water Quality Coalition to get from DMF the sanitary survey for this harbor. They have a more recent one. I haven't seen it. But you should read it and look at it and see what it says about pollution sources in this watershed. But you've had a dramatic change this year alone. Again, I was very surprised. Treating stormwater makes a difference. We had an area up on Buttermilk Way. Buttermilk Way is kind of near Massachusetts Maritime Academy and near the Beachmore Inn, the old Beachmore Inn. And that area was closed because there was a pipe there. If you stood on that beach, there was a giant gully because so much stormwater was going down that pipe and it was closing the shellfish bay. At that site, we installed a combination of rain garden and infiltration basins, and it was so effective that there was no more stormwater discharge. There's still a pipe on the beach, but there was no stormwater discharge. DMF opened that shellfish area. It had been permanently closed for about 15 years because of that stormwater discharge. They opened it because that stormwater was treated, it was put in the ground. And that's how you treat stormwater. You put it in the ground, you get it out of the streets, you get it out of the streams, you infiltrate it into the ground. Now, we talked about common solutions. Stormwater, I'm really focusing on bacteria, but stormwater contains nitrogen, and it's a big part of the source. So if you're putting the stormwater into a rain garden, the plants are taking up the nitrogen, it's infiltrating the ground, so you get a double benefit. Rain gardens are great. When I first started, we funded a bunch of catch basins. We put them in 1990 along here on Circuit Ave, 1991. And they were great. They were infiltrating catch basins. It did the job then. But the problem with infiltrating catch basins is that you have to maintain them. That means the DPW has to come, lift up the covers, pump out the sand, and make sure they're still infiltrating. We have discovered that infiltrating catch basins, though they look great on paper, kind of a bad idea because maintenance is a problem with all the towns. DPWs are short-staffed. You know, you don't realize what's happening underground if it's working or it's not working, because all these catch basins have overflows. So to prevent street flooding, you always have this overflow. But the beauty of rain gardens is that you get to see what's happening. You will see trash accumulating in your rain gardens. You will physically have to remove that trash. If there's a lot of sediment, you'll see there's a problem, and you will take action. But with infiltrating catch basins, I've seen some where we popped up the lid, and this was a site in Wareham, and I swear there was 1,000 plastic bottles in this basin. So again, I like surface treatment, rain gardens, swales, those kind of things, because you can really see whether or not it's working or not working. We have a site called stormwater.buzzardsbay.org. I encourage you to go to it. You can actually see some data for discharges for this watershed. I was clicking on some points to see what the bacteria levels were. This is the Stormwater Collaborative. The town of Bourne participates in the Buzzards Bay Stormwater Collaborative. Mass Maritime Academy students go out and help sample the stormwater with DPWs. They process it. We bring it to laboratories. Anyhow, I saw on Spruce Drive there was a discharge with 25,000 fecal coliform. And I'm saying, wow, there's something really going on there. Is there a failed septic system? Is there an overflow pipe? There's a lot of things that you discover when you start monitoring things. Anyhow, go to the site. You'll learn some information about what's happening in your watershed here. Just back to eelgrass. I talked to you about eelgrass and why was why I focused on it. It's a flowering plant. It's a grass, just like the grass here that we're standing on, sitting on. And it has pollen, it has seeds, and it propagates like grass. It can creep, or seeds can get dispersed, and it grows all around the place. And it really grows everywhere where water transparency is good. So you can have it very shallow areas, you can have it deep areas offshore. It pretty much grows anywhere. It can grow down to 15 feet. I've seen it to that. There are records of it going beyond 20 feet on the Elizabeth Islands and more than that. And we want to protect eelgrass beds because it's a refuge and feeding ground and nursery for many animals. Scallops settle on the blades. It's very important for the recovery and recruitment of scallops. And they help stabilize the bottom. And so that's the benefits of eelgrass. And that is why on the state regulations on TMDLs, it is the primary focus of many of the TMDLs on Cape Cod. And I keep on lapsing into jargon, I apologize. Total maximum daily loads. It's the permit to regulate nitrogen that's happening all around Cape Cod. The reason why they focus on eelgrass is because it's not only such an important habitat, it is the canary in the coal mine. It is the first thing to disappear when water quality is bad. Now, nitrogen isn't the only problem. We talk about dock construction, shellfishing, and I want to take a little bit of a dig here at Bourne. You're the only town on Cape Cod in Buzzards Bay that allows jet clamming in shallow embayments. Now, I actually found a letter from 1992. I wrote chairman of the board, Sarah Woods, telling them you have to get rid of jet clamming. It blows up sediment. It rips up eelgrass. When I was doing my thesis work, I was in Buttermilk Bay. I'm seeing all these guys jet clamming, and I see eelgrass floating everywhere. The water is all kind of, it's muddy and so forth. And I met a guy who lived on shore. His name was Jim Mulvey. And
We all know Jim. We all know Jim.
And for years, I worked and talked to Jim about trying to address this and other problems in Bourne. And the Conservation Commission has taken a lot of action. The Department of Natural Resources has taken a lot of action, but it's still on the books. I'm saying, why is jet clamming still on the books in this town? You can't do it with a general article at town meeting. It's the selectmen and the Shellfish Commission that needs to get it off the books. And I've granted now that it's very hard to do jet clamming anywhere near eelgrass. It should not be done in your shallow embayment. So I want to just throw that plug in. You can make a difference in getting, you can get a town petition, non-binding resolution passed in town.
So what is jet clamming?
Jet clamming. You have a motor in your boat, and it's like you're blowing a hose of salt water on this rake device, and it blows up so you can, all the shellfish pop to the surface. So it just, if you can imagine, you're just taking a garden hose and just like sticking it in the mud, and everything jets away, and the shellfish are left on the surface. A very destructive path. No other town in the region allows it.
Is that a common practice?
It is not a common practice. It is, Bourne is the only town that I'm aware of that allows it within the embayments.
So people are doing it.
They're not doing it so much anymore because of all the regulations by the Conservation Commission and the Department of Natural Resources. I don't know how many shell fishermen are still using the practice during the winter season, but there's no need for it. And if they're not doing it, all the more reason to get it off the books. The other thing that we have tried to promote is conservation moorings. A conservation mooring is, instead of a big concrete block and a chain, instead of a chain when at low tide scours the bottom. The block occupies a lot of habitat space. And again, you can't see it in the photographs here, but the alternative to a conventional mooring is a conservation mooring. A lot of towns are adopting it. When I was director, we had a grant program that if a town wanted to try to pursue it, but basically you replace your anchor with a helix into the sediment, and you use an elastic rod instead of a chain. Being used in Marion, being used in lots of towns. I saw some newspaper articles here in Bourne that people saying, well, it won't work in Bourne because you have all the rocky areas offshore. No, you can just do it in your most protected harbors. You can do it in Hen Cove. You can do it in Red Brook Harbor. Those areas have nice soft sediments. You don't have to worry about abrasion. It will work in those kinds of environments. So that's something that you could consider pursuing. Again, eelgrass, the primary cause of loss is nitrogen pollution. And I have this graphic, I'm not going to dwell on it, but basically nitrogen from the land, surface runoff enters streams, stormwater enters the groundwater, causes lots of algae. You add nitrogen to the water, it turns green. Okay? That when the water turns green, the light doesn't penetrate to reach eelgrass. Algae grows on the blades of eelgrass anyhow. In the most extreme situations, you have low oxygen concentration and fish kills. And there's lots of evidence of fish kills around Buzzards Bay over the years. Not enough oxygen in the water. It happens primarily at night when things are calm. And then some areas you have immense racks of algae washing up on shore. This was Little Harbor Beach in Wareham. Once the sewage treatment plant was built, this massive rack of algae disappeared. People couldn't even use this beach. It was 2 foot thick of algae on the shore. They would take shovels and shovel paths to the water to use the beach. Every once in a while, the DPW would come by with graders and front loaders and remove all the algae. So this was a horrible situation, but it disappeared once the wastewater facility was upgraded. When I was mapping out my eelgrass, I came to Hen Cove about 1983. And I went diving off a point over there. I had borrowed a boat from the Lloyd Center. And at that time, and again, it's got to be hard for you to see in this light, but in 1981, there was a ton of eelgrass in Hen Cove. There was a ton of eelgrass all around Pocasset. Now, it's mostly disappeared. In 2020, DEP identified a couple of beds in Red Brook Harbor, and that's the first time it reappeared there in 15 to 20 years, but then it disappeared. And 2020 was a very dry drought year, and in drought years you have good water transparency, so maybe it was related to that. So the fact that eelgrass reappeared tells me something positive is already happening in Buzzards Bay. And there's a couple of things going on. And I mentioned to you drought summers was one thing. We don't want more drought summers, but that's why you had that eelgrass probably appearing. But the other thing that's been happening, and you see this in the rainfall data, and you see this offshore, is that the Clean Air Act, which regulated discharges, especially from coal-burning plants in the Midwest, a lot of those plants ceased production. It reduced nitrogen in precipitation. And you really see this. It's dropped at least 40% over 20 or 30 years. Total nitrogen has also been declining in central Buzzards Bay. When Wareham wastewater facility came online, upgrades to the New Bedford facility and other upgrades that are being implemented slowly, they are helping improving the offshore water. And that's very important because your water quality here, I told you it's all about what's happening in this watershed, but your starting point is what's coming in the mouth of the harbor. So whatever it is at the mouth of the harbor, you're just adding on to. And what's happening at the mouth of the harbor, because of other things going on, nitrogen is going down. And that's a very good thing. It's cause for great hope. When I started looking at this data, I became very enthusiastic. And finally, we saw Kingman Marine implemented a nitrogen reducing facility, and that happened in 2016. Some new homes were connected to it, and that probably helped Red Brook Harbor. And there was a big drop in nitrogen from Red Brook itself. And there were some changes in the cranberry bog operation. I had heard about it. I have to get more details from the cranberry people. But nitrogen coming down Red Brook is declining, or had declined. So I'm going to just show you that. So again, it's going to be hard for you to see, but there's a figure that shows offshore, and it may not be much, but it went from around 0.4 to below 0.3 total nitrogen. And then Red Brook Harbor, there's a sudden decline in nitrogen. In Red Brook, there's a sudden decline in nitrogen. Barlow's Landing, Pocasset Harbor, it's been pretty steady. Okay, so the fact that we have these positive trends means that we can, if we reduce nitrogen, we can get eelgrass back over a wider area. The whole total maximum daily load, TMDL permits that DEP initiates, EPA approves, and the Cape Cod Commission and everyone tries to work with the towns to implement, that TMDL process is based on loading models, estimates of what's coming from the different landscapes, and water quality models. Not going to get into any of those details, but I just wanted to show you the history of the number of septic systems in this estuary. I can go and count all the houses from the assessors that are in this watershed. I can look at the year built, and just by doing that, I can see how many houses there were in this watershed. In 1950, the graph shows that there were about 600 houses, and today there's around 1,500 houses. So since 1950. And I have sewering on the bottom. There's a little bit of sewering. It's really a groundwater discharge permit. There's a couple of local mini sewer treatment facilities. The assisted living facility. There's another site, Kingman Marina. So that's why you see some sewering, sewer units in this watershed. Now, when the eelgrass disappeared in the late 80s, early 90s, I'm thinking to myself, well, how much nitrogen was coming in at that time? And it takes like around 10 years, maybe 20 years, because most of your development is very close to shore. 10 years, most of your nitrogen is getting in. 20 years in this watershed, probably in Pocasset, most of it. So I can say in 1970, there were about 900 houses. And today, there's around 1,500 houses. So in the back of my mind, you're saying, well, if we can remove 600 septic systems from the watershed, maybe that'll get eelgrass back. Well, it's a little more complicated because nitrogen is not just coming from the septic system. Septic systems are your dominant source. And again, I'm showing a pie chart here, and you can see the different pies. But your lawn is 6%. Septic systems are 77% of your nitrogen. The road in front of your house is 9.2%. So 78% is your septic system. You have all this other stuff. Even if you're to sewer houses, you still have to deal with all the runoff from the roads, the roofs, the nitrogen from the lawns. That becomes part of the solution. So again, I don't want to dwell too much. This is a pie chart of the whole watershed, not just your, not just a parcel. And by the way, that other parcel, it had, you probably didn't notice, it said what the occupancy is. I think it said 1.86 or somewhere around 1.76. Believe it or not, that's the annual occupancy in this watershed. When you factor in people who are here only in the summertime, people in the winter, household size is declining. There's about 1.76 people per household. But anyhow, that's just for a single lot. If you add up all the sources in the watershed, nitrogen is about half, and then it's 48%, and impervious is 33%. So removing nitrogen from stormwater, getting it into the ground, getting it out of the rivers and bays from direct discharge is an important part of the solution to remove nitrogen. You add atmospheric, and that becomes part of it, and I want to get into that. We had to do a build-out analysis. A build-out analysis says how many more houses can be built in this watershed. Believe it or not, with conventional subdivision, or what's called approval not required, where you don't have to put in a subdivision road and to build lots, this watershed can have another 483 houses. I want to point out to you, there's a big parcel on Scraggy Neck. I forget what it's called. It's something forest. It's not permanently protected. you should work with the property owners to see if you can get it permanently protected. Because that parcel alone, you could put 76 houses just in your watershed. I have the golf course as a potential development area. We already saw the golf course up on this piece. A lot of golf courses have been disappearing from the Cape because selling it to a developer makes you a lot more money than having a golf course. So there's potential to work with the property owner to protect those kinds of land more permanently. So finally, I'm near the end here. We do this model. Jim Churchill, he's a scientist at Hui. He's working with Rachel Jakuba. Rachel Jakuba is the lead on this project. And I forgot to mention, the town of Bourne got a grant from DEP to do a TMDL. The Buzz Bay Coalition is the lead on that project. When I was director of the NEP, I committed my services to do the nitrogen loading model. Jim Churchill is the scientist doing the hydrodynamic model. In any case, here's what the model looks like. And again, it's kind of hard to see. But basically, you see Pocasset Harbor, Hen Cove, and Red Brook Harbor. They're kind of on the yellowish green side. That has the highest nitrogen concentration. You know, near the mouth of the bay, water flushes in and out very fast, but it takes longer to flush out of Hen Cove. So those are the concentrations. And then what I've mapped is the existing eelgrass. It's probably very hard to see, but we put little circles around where the eelgrass beds are. So we're looking at the concentration that eelgrass can grow, total nitrogen concentration. And we're trying to revise the model, take nitrogen out of the system. Sewering, alternative systems, take nitrogen out of the system. Maybe stormwater management is going to be part of that. Take nitrogen out of the system and turn those inner areas more of a blue color so that you can see, have a recovery of eelgrass. And I'm over time here. So just to wrap up, keep taking action. There are, again, billions of us on the planet. Your purchases make a difference. Little things help. Stop rainwater from leaving your property. Redirect downspouts out of driveways into infiltration areas. You don't need a lush monoculture, green lawn. Reduce water, reduce pesticides, reduce herbicides. Go for a Cape Cod lawn. Increase use of native plants, eliminate the worst nuisance invasives, and plant rain gardens. Do you have a rain garden here? Put a rain garden in your yard. Plug-in balcony solar is coming, and support local action to better the environment, and participate in town government. Volunteer for a board if you want to try to really make a difference. And that'll just end. Sorry for going over.
The best information we've had in our 6 years of these meetings. Fantastic job, Joe. Thank you. I just want to acknowledge Rachel Jakuba. She is in the crowd waving. The only reason Joe is here today is because Rachel connected us with Joe. So Rachel's a very good friend of our group.
Before you let Joe go, is
questions?
there any chance of getting a PDF of your presentation?
We're going to put the whole presentation on our website, and we'll probably email a link to it sometime this week. So that way you can look at it, study it, and if you have questions, you can email back to me, and we'll get the questions to Joe, and we'll get them answered. So we're a little over because Joe did such a great job. So we're going to skip the questions right now. At the end, Joe will be around if you have questions. So a couple things to answer Joe's points here. Well, we have 2 members of the Board of Selectmen here, and the Select Board, and the jet clamming is going to be eliminated by this fall. It's already in process. So there's a good reaction to that. Thank you, Anne Marie and Jean. Okay, just quickly, one thing about the storm drains, because it's important now that Joe brought it up. So Tim Leiden couldn't be here today to talk about the new drains. So the simple solution is that they're not finished, they're not active. It will be they wait 60 to 90 days from the first installation to let it settle. So that comes up sometime in September. So the grade will all be fixed, and the drains will take effect immediately after that. So as part of the process, the town paid 25% of the cost of that. Federal government paid the other 75%. And those storm drains, working with our rain gardens, are the answer to the stormwater runoff. And of course, the next topic will be everybody's favorite, or ours anyway, fertilizer. Deanna is going to introduce our next speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. I had the pleasure of meeting our next speaker at 10 o'clock this morning, but I knew I had to introduce him, and so I went on the internet. I love that. And I urge you to do the same, because what I'm going to say about him is short and sweet, but there's so much more. Very interesting guy. So Keith Wilda is our next speaker. He's an accomplished aquaculture scientist, sustainable agriculture leader who currently serves as the CEO of Aquaculture Resource Corporation, which is located in Dennis, Mass. He's got over 30 years of expertise in hydroponics, aquaponics, and controlled environment agriculture. Keith has dedicated his career to building low-impact, resilient food systems that strengthen local communities. He's an innovator of sustainable fertilizer. That is why he's here. He co-founded Fish Brew and Soil Harmony, which successfully engineered a method to repurpose fish waste to low nitrogen, microbe-rich, organic plant soil conditioner to protect the waters of Cape Cod from harmful nitrogen loads and pesticides. You have to use it. From his roots as a multi-generational farming family in Hadley, Mass, to his leadership across the region's marine ecosystems, he has become a driving force for sustainable innovation on Cape Cod. So he's literally taken it from farm to sea. I'd like you guys to welcome Keith.
Thank you. I just learned a lot about myself. I'm a farmer. I grew up in Hadley, Massachusetts in the dirt, growing crops conventionally. And as I got into aquaponics by accident, my junior year of college, I found a company that was doing something with fish and something with plants, and they weren't calling it aquaponics yet because it was 34 years ago. When they coined the phrase aquaponics, I had gotten into it. And I was growing different types of plants using the wastewater from fish, thinking that it was the NPK that the fish was producing that was growing the plants. After about 25 years, I realized it wasn't the NPK, it wasn't the nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus that was actually growing the plants. It was the bacteria that lived in that water. It was the fungi that lived in that water. It was a different protozoa that ate the bacteria and fungi that produced the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So as I started looking at this, I started looking at fish waste in a different way. The problem was a lot of the fish waste I was looking at was commercially produced. I ran large indoor, outdoor fish farms around the country, all around the world. And then all of a sudden I stumbled across this property in West Barnstable, Massachusetts on Cape Cod about 20 years ago. A friend of mine owned it. And we started looking at the water, and it was really interesting. He had all kinds of things growing there. He had watercress, he had grapes, he had pawpaws, he had all kinds of different wildlife that was coming across the property. And so when we started looking at the waste from the fish, we started realizing there was a lot of properties in the waste. And what we found, in 2015, I purchased the farm with a partner of mine. And as we started looking at the waste in 2020, during COVID, when we couldn't sell the fish, because our fish were primarily used for stocking, and all the stocking fishing derbies had been shut off because of COVID, we started looking at the waste and what was in the waste. So I sent it out to this company in Texas called Dr. DNA. And they looked at the DNA of every species that was in that waste water from the fish. And what they came up was 3,000 different bacteria, 3,500 different fungal spores, and multiple different protozoa and diatoms. Now, to keep it simple, the Soil Food Web Lab, which was put out by NRCS 25 years ago, basically is a circle of life. You start with a plant that produces sugars, hormones, and exudates, releases it into the soil to tell the soil what it needs. So if we look at a forest, we'll use this as an example of a forest, even though it's not a true forest. All those plants are growing without fertilizer. Why? Because each one of those plants is calling for something out of their roots. And they're calling for a different bacteria that either harbors nitrogen, because we know there's nitrogen bacteria that fix nitrogen from the air or from rainwater, and it's stored up in the ground. and we have to release it. It doesn't release on its own until that bacteria either dies or gets consumed by something. And it takes many thousands and thousands of different bacteria and fungi to make all this work. We've killed a lot of it in our lawns. We've killed most of it in our agricultural fields. Every time we till the soil, the UV light kills all that bacteria and fungi. We learned that from COVID, if nothing else. Use UV to sterilize everything. Use UV lights to sterilize surfaces. The same thing happens when you till your soil. All those microbes that are on the surface get killed by the UV light up to 2 to 3 inches down. So you think about that. Every time you till up your garden, you're starting from ground zero again. But let's think about your lawns, because that's really what I'm here to talk to you about. So you look at your lawns need to be diverse, like the forest. The forest is diverse. The reason the forest works is because you have ferns, you have low plants, you have trees, and they're all calling for different bacteria and fungus at a different time. And they're present there. On our lawns, they're no longer present because we've used commercial fertilizers, we've used pesticides, we use herbicides, and it kills off all those bacteria. But if you can get them back into your soil, your plants will thrive and work on their own, and you won't need the fertilizer. When we add a chemical fertilizer to our lawn, it gets on. It's like feeding your kid sugar at a birthday party. Your lawn's really excited because it's got the fertilizer, but then it rains, or you turn on your sprinkler system, and it drives a little bit lower and a little bit lower. In most of our grass on Cape Cod, the roots are only about 4 to 6 inches deep. So once that gets below 6 inches, the plant can't utilize it anymore. It's not there for the plant. You can keep putting it on it, but it's going to keep pushing down into the ground, which then ends up into our waterways. And that's where our nitrogen runoff comes from. Where if you use a natural product, something like this, I'm actually going to pass this around. You guys can open it, you can shake it, you can smell it. It doesn't smell. This is made of kelp. And what we found was when you add these bacteria and fungi back to the soil, your plants now all of a sudden know what to do with the sugars that they've retained. When you give them fertilizer, they retain the sugars. And in certain plants, that fruiting plants, like tomato plants, if you have tomato plants in your gardens, when you see that rot in your tomato plant, it's because that sugar's got nowhere to go, because you've been dumping potentially Miracle Grow on there, which is instant fertilizer, instant gratification for that plant. But if that plant can release the sugars it's holding up, it'll actually attract the bacteria and fungi it needs to produce nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium on its own. Bacteria is very important. Joe mentioned bacteria in a negative way, but there's a lot of positive bacteria that are in the ground. And those positive bacteria are the ones that mineralize minerals. When you put bone meal on your garden, or you put rock phosphate in your garden, a plant can't eat rock phosphate. It has to be broken down. When the earth was formed, we had millions and millions of different bacteria that broke down the earth's crust into soil, water. The bacteria would break it down. So if your bacteria aren't present, your lawn can't thrive from it. Your lawn is going to rely completely on you irrigating it and putting fertilizer. A great example, usually I have a slideshow, and this presentation is about an hour long. I'm going to condense it. But as you're leaving here, I'm going to use Paula's yard as an example. She is a customer that came to me 4 years ago at Home and Garden Store. I was selling a product called Fish Brew. They asked me what it was made of. I said it was made of fish poop. They looked at me funny. They said, really? I said, but it doesn't smell. So they shook the bottle and they smelled it. And they bought 2 quarts. And they took it home. And they used it. And how does it work, Paula?
Great. Yeah. Steve is the one that knows more about it than I do if he's here. It has worked very well. It eliminated the need for any other products on the lawn. The lawn looks pretty good. It doesn't look like a golf course, but we're not shooting for that anymore. Yeah, it's all good.
So when you use, that's one product. That one product basically inoculates your lawn. It gets you the bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. Protozoa are the little microbes that go around and they eat the bacteria and they eat the fungi and they release the nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus that those bacteria are holding. They keep the carbon and release the nitrogen. And it's a natural process. Then, if your lawn, in first thing in the spring, your lawn's a little slow to get going, it's cold, the bacteria and fungi aren't working yet, the product that's being passed around is made with kelp. That's made with sugar kelp grown right here on Cape Cod. There's a lot of people growing kelp as a food product, but when they have kelp that they can't sell, it goes to waste. I started collecting that kelp. I started collecting seaweed off the beaches that goes into landfills that can't go to landfills anymore and now has to go composting facilities. And I started brewing it. I started breaking it down naturally and turned it into a product that's being passed around now. That product also has a bunch of bacteria, fungi, and protozoa in it that will help your lawn, but it also has hormones, exudates, and sugars that your lawn needs. And what it does is it actually mimics your lawn in full bloom in July and August, in that it tells the bacteria and fungi you need to wake up and get working. And so that's a stimulant. So you have an inoculant, you have a stimulant, and then you need sometimes you need some types of fertilizers. On lawns, typically not, but on your garden, you can use something like fish hydrolysate, chicken manure, something that's more natural that these bacteria will actually break down and compost in your garden for you. When you use compost, I'm not against compost, but for instance, on your lawn like this, you would have to add 2 inches of compost for the whole lawn for the compost to be effective. But if you take the same compost, you condense it and you make it into a tea, you've trapped all those microorganisms into a tea, and you can spray it on your lawn. And people hear of compost tea. The problem with compost tea, it has a shelf life of about 36 hours. The products that are passing around now have a shelf life of about 4 years. We call it bugs in the jug. The bacteria and fungi that live in that jug stay alive because they have something called diatoms. Diatoms are what produce 40% of the oxygen that we breathe as people out of the ocean. So all the plankton that Joe was talking about that's in the ocean produces oxygen as well as our trees do. But that plankton also lives inside that bottle. And because the West Barnstable location was so unique, it had freshwater diatoms that survived in the bottle for up to 6 years, which produce oxygen and keep everything in that bottle going. We recommend you use it the year you buy it, to use it up quick. Now, the downside to these products, and this is how I'm going to end it so that there's any questions, I'm trying to keep this brief. The downside to this product is the person selling it or making it is after about 5 or 6 years, if you've done everything right and you haven't added any more pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides to your lawn, you're not going to need to buy it because it's going to get established, especially on a lawn. I had a customer, my first customer that was high profile, we'll call it, and don't judge me, it was the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys called me up and their superintendent said, hey, I'm having a problem with fairy ring, which is killing their practice fields in Frisco, Texas. He ordered 6 gallons. 6 weeks later, he ordered another 6 gallons, and 6 weeks after that, the fairy ring was gone. The lawn was good. He said, I have 300-pound men wrestling on my lawn, and it looks great. Converted completely over to natural fertilizers, no longer using pesticides and herbicides. So this stuff does work. There's a testimonial lawn right next door when you walk by. If you have any questions, please contact me. Keith has my information. Did I make the time?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Great job, Keith. Thank you very much. My annual editorial comment on what Keith just talked about are all these. So if you think I'm saving these over the winter, no, I put them in the trash, the recycling on Monday, and then I pick them up again in the spring. This is how many there are, just that I would pick up. If I picked up yours, I'm not sorry. But I do have one that's a favorite. So this one was in our rain garden number 3 in the fall, and on the back of it, it says, ban fertilizer, Trump 28. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about our salt marsh. So we're working with our friend Dan Barnett, who we work with on everything now. So the salt marsh off Salt Marsh Lane, off Bella Vista behind our house, is dying. And it's dying faster than we can keep track of. There's a photo collage under the canopy over here that shows dated pictures going back to the 1940s up to right now this spring. It's a very sad state of affairs. It's really neglect is what it is. So, one of our neighbors over on Salt Marsh, Bud Bristow, many of you may know him. So Bud went to the Conservation Commission in 2015 to try to get them to do something with the salt marsh, and he basically was told that the Conservation Commission doesn't do things, they just approve things or reject things. So at that point in time, if someone would have had some advice for the Conservation Commission, for Bud, we might have a better salt marsh now, but it's a very sad state of affairs. So right now we have a new initiative that we're part of, and Chris Beatty, one of our board of directors, is going to talk about it.
Okay, I'll keep this brief, keep us on track here. But every year or every election year, there are ballot questions. This year, there's ones coming on, coming off. It's hard to keep track of it. It's hard to keep track of the ballot initiatives. But I'll tell you, there is one called Question 6, which is supported by the Nature for Massachusetts Coalition of Environmental Conservation and Community Organizations, including Pocasset Water Quality Coalition. We're listed as 90 different organizations around the state that are focused on water quality and nature preservation, and we're proud to be part of that group. And what the objective of question 6 is to set aside revenue from the existing state sales tax, so it's not an additional tax, $100 million every year for protecting and conserving water and nature, and it comes from the general fund, so it becomes a priority. It just says this is a priority for the residents of this state, and we're proud to be supporting that visibly. And I would ask each and every one of you to take a look at question 6 and hopefully feel the need to vote yes on your ballot. Thank you.
All right, good job, Chris. Okay, so we, back to the salt, well, I'm going to stop for a second. So we have a couple of these giveaways for, it's a brochure on the the jellyfish drains, which is what the town has installed. So the jellyfish drains work very uniquely. Bourne is the only town or the only municipality north of Maryland to have these jellyfish drains. So we'll put something on our website about it. You can go on the town website, or you can take one of these brochures, which I think we have under the canopy. So again, reminding us that stormwater runoff is a huge factor, but we are trying to do something about it. So now back to the salt marsh. Deanna or Chris, can you grab the books for? So everyone got a little outline of our meeting today. On the back of your outline is a ticket. So we have 8 of these books that we're going to give away. So this is called The Life and Death of a Salt Marsh. And Jan and I have had one now for a few months, and it's startling, the reading. One of the amazing things about it is that this book was written like 30 years ago. Is that right, Rachel? 50 years ago. And it's still relevant. It's still relevant. The same problems existed then, and they still exist now. So we're going to have a little raffle here to see who gets a book. Okay. Where are the numbers? Okay, so the first book goes to 666-2213. Excellent, we have a winner. Okay, all these start with 666, so we're going to skip that part. 2283. 2283. Excellent.
Congratulations.
2236. Paul. Way to go, Paul. 2261. Oh, Carol.
Congratulations.
2238.
There we go.
Okay, Chris, how many do we have left?
4.
Excellent. 2235. 2255. Pat Karen, whose husband Mike isn't here today, but he is our computer guy. 2285. Nancy's got one.
All right.
One more.
2214. Wait, we have one more. Hold it. I got one under my arm. Good job. 2299.
Who's 22?
He's coming towards us right here with the sunglasses. Where's my program?
Congratulations.
Okay, so we also have something different this year. Keith and the Fish Brew people have donated some starter kits of starter fertilizer to start using the Fish Brew. So if you'd like to come up, if you'd like to try it on your lawn and give it a start, come up after the meeting and we can work out the details. We have the product already over here under the canopy. So does anybody have any real big questions that we could get to right now? Because we're past the time. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Yeah, we couldn't go to the select board meeting the other day, but how'd you make out with the septic?
So Bonnie is talking about our initiative to get rid of cesspools.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the board, it wasn't the select board, we were at the Board of Health
Oh, okay.
on Wednesday. The Enterprise did a very nice article in yesterday's paper. It's also available online. So our goal is to, one, have the cesspools identified more quickly and get people notified. Number two is to get rid of the exemption. So if you pass the house to the kids or your whatever, you can't do it without having your cesspool or your septic identified. And the third issue is currently state regulations say that when you're notified, you have 2 years to replace your cesspool. So municipalities can change the rules more strict, but not easier. So what we're hoping to get done, and the Board of Health was extremely positive on what we presented, is to change that regulation from 2 years to 1. So we did a lot of research, which we have presented to the board. There are 4 engineering companies within earshot who can start your engineering in less than 3 months. Construction takes 2 weeks at the most, so it's very, very, very doable to replace a cesspool in a year. So the board has to consult with town council, they have to consult with a few other people to make that notification official, but we expect that that will happen, and if you have a cesspool, you'll have to replace it within a year of notification. If you have one, you should be embarrassed, basically. Title V was initiated in Massachusetts 51 years ago, 1975. Title V was updated in 1995, and again, updated again to allow for state tax credits in 1997. And we all know it was updated in 2023 to affect nitrogen-sensitive areas, which of course the TMDL is critical to us being declared a nitrogen-sensitive area, because then we will all have to do it. So if you have a cesspool, it'd be a great idea to do it sooner, because once the TMDL gets declared, then everybody will be replacing their septic. So it won't just be the cesspool people. So Bonnie, thanks for bringing that up. I didn't want to talk about it because I hate talking about poop, but that was a great topic. So we're also working on a few other initiatives, which we're not ready to talk about yet. One of them is going to require probably town meeting vote. So we'll keep you all posted on that. We're not just lying around eating bonbons and playing golf. We're working. So I guess the last thing I have is, we have a Facebook page, and we're very close to 100 followers, and that changes the dynamic of the Facebook page. So if you're not following PWQC on Facebook, please do so. Please check our website regularly. We're updating it all the time. Pat's husband, Mike, is the website guy. And we want everybody, if you're not a member, please join. You can go on the website and join. You can talk to one of the people with the lanyards, board of directors, and they'll help you to join. So we have a couple of other little tidbits here. So we put out these stickers 5 or 6 years ago. People have new cars since then, or you change your front door. If you need a sticker, please come up and see us after. And we are big supporters of the Aqua Fund. So if you are planning on putting in a new septic, or you're getting rid of your cesspool, Jan and I can attest to the extreme professionalism of these people. We did it for our new septic system, and they're a pleasure to work with. And the loan rates are way below market. So that's we have these brochures if anyone's interested. Anything else? Did I miss anything? Deanna, did I miss anything? Question?
How prevalent are these cesspools?
Well, there's someone standing in this room, under this tent, who told us there may be 100 to 200 cesspools in Bourne. I'm not going to say who that is, but that's an estimate. Because they're not just in Pocasset. They're in Grey Gables, they're in Sagamore Beach, they're in Bourndale. It's really disgusting. And it's, I don't want to talk about it. Anybody else? All set? I guess we're ready. Everybody dismissed.